Welcome one, welcome all to the node, brought to you by DeFi Crypto and Airdrops and DeFi University. I am Mike, aka Veteran Crypto, and with me as always is David from DeFi University. How's it going, brother?
Outstanding, Mike. Doing well this morning, man. Just trying to avoid over trading. That's what I'm trying to do right now. I see
Yeah,
opportunities everywhere.
it's always a challenge when there's a lot going on in the world and there's a lot of volatility to trade. I'm sure that it can. There's a lot of shiny objects that can catch your attention. So,
Yeah, no
uh,
kidding, man.
yeah, I thankfully, and as a blessing and a curse, I don't have that problem because I'm not a trader. Not that I wouldn't love to be and be able to take advantage of short-term opportunities. I just haven't developed that skill set to a point to where I'm willing to delve into that quite yet.
Yeah, man.
So
It's a really difficult skill set to cultivate. I'll tell you that.
it is. I have my hats off to those that have dedicated the time and have the discipline to become very good at that craft. I respect anybody that that has the discipline and the focus to develop any skill set. If that's in trading, if that's in martial arts, if that's physical fitness, mental endeavors, a college and developing your mind, things like that. Anything. It takes a lot, and it's becoming more and more rare that people have the ability to be able to focus at that level. I mean, I think a lot of I've been watching a lot of stuff on. There's one really interesting guy. We're gonna be showing him a little bit on tonight on the Red Pill. He's I believe he worked for the CIA, but you see him a lot in clips on social media where he basically talks about like how to read people and how to avoid giving up too much, like under questioning. I'm not doing it justice, but he's like a behavioral science, basically behavioral sciences is what he specializes in, and he talks about the dangers of social media and short form social media
Oh
specifically,
yeah. Oh yeah.
and how it's rewiring people's brains to not be able to. Uh, oh, am I
Oh,
back?
there we go. Yeah,
There
you're
we go.
back.
All right. Well, let's go. Let's go ahead and jump
No,
on
no,
in.
no, no, no. That was actually really interesting, man. So what you were talking about, Mike, I was watching this video on YouTube the other day, dude, and there was some female interviewer, and she's interviewing all of these teachers, and these teachers like they take care of like young children, right? Like
Yeah.
between the ages of like 3 and like
So
9 or something.
preschool.
Yeah, like preschool through like early elementary school. And what the teachers, there were a lot of them, what they were saying as they were being interviewed was that these kids that they're trying to teach now, like
Yeah.
they can't hold still, or like their attention spans are literally the length of the short form content. Like
Yeah.
that short form content has made it such that they can't focus on anything. Like, I think we might have talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but you remember when we were kids, right? You would have the substitute teacher come in, and the
Yeah.
substitute would bring in like the VCR,
Oh
like
yeah.
on the
Yeah.
TV
Pop the,
stand
oh, we
thing.
always loved it. Because
You
you
know
didn't have to
that?
just watch
Yeah,
a movie.
it was awesome, man. Like we'd have an hour off, right? Watch a movie. Well, nowadays, what the teachers say is that you can't even get kids excited about watching a movie because 45 minutes is way too long, way
Yeah.
too long. And what that does is you can't remember shit. So, like,
No.
if you can't focus for more than like 5 seconds, good luck being able to remember or build any skill sets at all. And that's happening to children, man, to children. It's the children, Mike.
It's
It's
the
fucking
children.
crazy,
It's
man.
all about the
Yeah,
children. So no, it honestly
crazy.
any young person that is going to be able to break out of that mold. And honestly, it's like a form of control, and that's again the red pill tonight. Don't miss it. 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. It gets unhinged. We usually have a couple drinks. Tell everybody smoke it if you got it, and we dive deep. It's no holds barred, uncensored mayhem, but it's very good content. It is, and tonight we're going to focus on basically the reshaping of the global societies, to be more malleable and to be more more controllable by the powers that be. And there's a lot of evidence, a little bit of a spoiler. There's a lot of evidence that Facebook. I found some information where the U.S. government, the CIA, actually had a program that where they wanted to create social media for this purpose. And literally the day that that program shut down was the day that Facebook launched. And so it's very interesting to see the effect social media has had on society, and the degrading of not just attention spans, but just kind of the separation of. And there's another clip that I found, and I don't want to talk about this too much because we're going to be talking about it tonight. You know what? Let's just move on to the news because I don't want
Sweet.
to ruin the show.
I like
But
crypto DeFi news, man.
yeah. This stuff is just so important, though.
It
And that's why
is.
we started that Red Pill show, is because I don't want to take up these shows talking about that stuff, but it needs to be talked about. So first out the gate, Bitcoin is sitting at about a little bit over 71,000 right now. So it's 70,000 is holding. As market pauses after breakout, institutional flows steady. Bitcoin traded around 72.7, maintaining breakout levels despite macro risks from the Iran conflict and derivatives caution. International demand remains solid. CoinShares notes no major shakeout from recent drawdowns, with ETF inflows supporting the pause but before potential pushes towards 74 or 80,000. Ether and other major alts edged higher in sympathy, while DeFi computing tokens lagged slightly. So, what are you seeing in the markets as far as Bitcoin and alts?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing out of Bitcoin so far is, Bitcoin getting rejected below resistance. So, I'm just taking a look over here at my other screen and I see BTC didn't even make it up to 74 and a half yesterday.
Mhm,
It got rejected at 74. So we're
mhm.
still trading well below an important level of resistance.
Yeah.
This looks like a bear market rally to me.
Okay.
And, what was really interesting last night, Mike, when I was taking a look, that final half hour session of the day that I do every day,
Yeah.
just the TA roundup call that I do, I was taking a look down through all of the alts, but I was pricing them in Bitcoin terms.
Mhm.
And what I saw was that they're all underperforming Bitcoin, even on this recent bounce. All of the altcoins are underperforming BTC. And so I
Not all.
expect,
Not all.
well, most of them,
Well,
most of them.
coming up, I got three of them that I was able to find because we were talking yesterday about how like very few, but there
Yep.
are certain alts that seem to be moving separate from Bitcoin and the rest of the market. But go ahead.
I mean, if you found a couple of alts that are outperforming, what it's got to be what Canton, I bet.
That's one of them.
Um, that's one. Yeah. Well, don't spoil it. Don't
All
spoil
right,
it.
all right,
We'll talk
all right.
about it in a minute.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, just really, really interesting. I would be curious to see what those ETF flows look like because that used to
Please
be
do, because
something.
I put that in the
Yeah.
thumb because I do want to eventually have a discussion about your thoughts on ETFs, because I know it was hailed as this awesome thing for crypto that these ETFs were going to send everything to the moon. And honestly, and maybe it's my ignorance, I just don't see it as much of a positive as it was made out to be initially. But go ahead.
I mean, it probably is a net positive just to attract more attention to the space, onboard more users, even if they're, purchasing digital assets through a traditional like rail. I mean, look, more people aware of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, you name it, I think the better. And, the one thing that does concern me a little bit is that could that Bitcoin being custodied by all of those different ETFs, could that be seized by the government someday? But even if it could, would that even matter? I don't know that it would even matter because it doesn't matter who's holding it really. It matters if they're able to exert influence on the network as a result of holding all that Bitcoin. And the answer is I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe, but I really don't think so. And right now, Mike, I'm taking a look at Farside. So Farside, they track those ETF flows. And I'm just taking a look here at those Bitcoin ETF flows. And I mean, look, the last couple of sessions, it's been very positive. We've
Mhm.
got over the last couple of sessions about a little bit more than $1 billion in inflows across all of those Bitcoin ETFs. So that's pretty positive. We take a look at Ethereum, a little bit more of a mixed bag. Positive yesterday, not positive the day before. And then the final one, Solana. That Solana ETF is the smallest of them by far. And yeah, it's been positive just about for the entirety of the last month, actually. That Solana ETF is seeing, basically only inflows, which is kind of interesting, but very, very small, very, very small compared to the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs. So yeah, we are seeing inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs, but the problem for me with all that, Mike, is that it's a bear market. And so, when I see guys like Tom Lee hopping on CNBC saying that this is what a bottom looks like, um, I don't know, man. I don't think we've seen like real depression yet. I don't think
Yeah.
we've seen capitulation. Markets haven't capitulated. We haven't even seen any type of correction out of the stock market yet this year. So, um, yeah, I don't think that this is a bottom, not quite yet. I think that patience is the name of the game right now. And, when I look at BTC, I see it just repeating that same pattern that it put in last cycle, last bear cycle. So I don't expect anything to be any different this time.
So I'm listening. I'm trying to find that headline. It seems to have disappeared on me. But if you want to address this question from Not Scoot Boy, is it if you want to address that real quick?
Yeah. So this is the paper Bitcoin question, right?
Yeah,
Um, yeah. I don't see how those ETFs could print paper Bitcoin. If every share has to be backed one for one with spot, then that kind of eliminates the ability for them to print paper Bitcoin, right? And that's the way that I see it.
well, my
Unless
question
maybe
is,
I'm wrong.
well, and my question is, and you're correct, of course. My question is how is that Bitcoin that is used to back it acquired? And does that matter? Because it doesn't seem like with all of these, all this ETF buying, it never really felt like it made. Well, and maybe it did. It didn't feel like it made Bitcoin pump like it should have. I guess is what I should say.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason for that is there is still a really, really big demand to sell spot BTC. There's a lot of guys out there and gals too who are OG holders from 2012.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them who, hold thousands and thousands of Bitcoin. And so
Mhm.
and this is a global asset too. So if there are, I read some stat maybe like a month or two ago that every single day, just on Binance for sale, there's 7,000 Bitcoin a day,
Yeah.
every single day.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of selling pressure every single day. And,
Okay.
it's one thing to see that, hey, there's a lot of demand, from these ETFs, the people who are buying shares in these ETFs. Therefore, the ETFs have to go out and buy spot Bitcoin. So there's a lot of demand to buy. But again, it's supply and demand, right? If there's more sellers than buyers, well, you could have the most impressive looking ETF inflows in the world and price would still go down.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and I'm reading here a little bit about, I just asked Gemini, like, what's this concept of paper Bitcoin? Like, is it possible that in some way those ETFs could be like printing paper Bitcoin? And it says that there are ways that paper Bitcoin could theoretically occur.
Well, and
Um,
real quick, so just so people that don't understand what that term means, paper Bitcoin refers to basically a artificial way to multiply Bitcoin. So it's been done with gold. So basically instead of physical gold, and something having to be backed, one to one, with physical gold, some representation of it. Paper means that they're just trading the price of it. They're not trading the actual commodity. So that's what this referring to as paper Bitcoin is. It's a representation of that wouldn't be backed by it if it was paper, paper Bitcoin. But go ahead.
Yeah. So what I see is it's basically saying that rehypothecation in lending, that process where your Bitcoin is used as collateral for multiple loans at the same time, that's in some way could create paper Bitcoin.
Okay.
So let's see this. So it says the chain reaction here. Check this out. Um, Rehypothecation in lending. This is the most likely way that paper Bitcoin could be created. It says this is the process where your Bitcoin is used as collateral for multiple loans at the same time. Here's the chain reaction. You deposit one BTC into a lending platform to earn yield. That platform lends your one BTC to a hedge fund. The hedge fund then uses that same one BTC as collateral on another platform to borrow stablecoins. The result, so there's still only one actual Bitcoin on the blockchain, but
Yes.
now there are three different entities:
Mhm.
you, the first platform, and the second platform, who all believe they have a claim to that same Bitcoin.
But do
So
they
this,
actually?
so yes,
Well,
yes.
but because of that smart contract, it's that Bitcoin is locked. So you're lending it. Somebody is borrowing it. Well, yeah, I guess so. I'm just wondering if one person in that chain, like either defaults or if the initial person pulls that Bitcoin, or the second platform defaults and gets liquidated, or something of that nature, then does it? I'm trying to think of the right words to
So
use.
there would only ever be one physical Bitcoin, one spot Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But if it's lent out three times, well, then you've effectively created paper Bitcoin. In fact, I've got an image here, Mike, that
Okay.
I can share my screen. This might actually be and share this specific tab. And let's just take a look at this. Okay, so what do you think about this? Let me see if I can zoom into this thing a little bit so we can see this a little bit more. Oh, it won't do it. So I'm about as zoomed in as I can go. So it says step one, the user, that's you, deposit one BTC to earn yield, and you get a claim for your one BTC. That's your paper claim number one. Step two, a lending platform. That lending platform, A, the one that you deposited your Bitcoin to, it lends that collateral. So the platform A lends one BTC to hedge fund A. So platform A retains a claim on that BTC. That's paper claim two. Oh, look at that. And then the hedge fund A, it pledges that same Bitcoin as collateral. So the hedge fund uses the same one BTC as collateral on lending platform B to borrow stablecoins. The fund retains a claim on that BTC, and that's paper claim three. Wow. So this is how paper Bitcoin is created. Oh my goodness, I never knew this. It's just this process of rehypothecation does
Yeah.
create paper Bitcoin because you've got all of these IOUs for that same one BTC.
And each
So
one of
you've
those
got,
IOUs is a claim. Is a claim
yes,
on that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got one actual Bitcoin, but then you've got, the original user who deposited that Bitcoin with the lending platform, they've got a claim. The lending platform itself that lent it to the hedge fund, they've got a claim. And the hedge fund that, used it as collateral on lending platform B to borrow stables, well, they've got a claim too. So at the end of the day, there's only one Bitcoin, but there's three entities with a claim on it. So you essentially created three paper Bitcoin out of one. And there's no reason that this process has to stop at three, right?
Well, I think an important thing to note is that each one of those claims is dependent on a smart contract. So it's if it's
Well,
if
not necessarily, because some of these could just be based on relationships. Like you could
well,
take spot Bitcoin.
but unless the third party defaults in some way, or basically breaks the smart contract, the second can't close out. They can't take back ownership of that because there's a smart contract in place. It was lent out to them, and unless they default or get liquidated, or do something with it to where they leveraged it, or something like that, and it goes outside of the threshold of the contract, they can't revoke that. So
Well,
now,
I think they can. I think they
how?
can because I'll tell you how. So if I'm looking at this image and we're talking about spot Bitcoin, well then there are no smart contracts. If I am the owner of this one original Bitcoin and I lend it to a lending platform, there are no smart contracts involved there ever. It's just me giving up custody of my keys to the lending platform in
Well, no,
exchange for
talking
yield.
specifically second party and third party. The second
So,
party
e- so
that you gave,
even there, so
well,
yeah, even in that example too, because we're talking here about real physical spot Bitcoin. So it's only ever going to be like a TradFi type contract. You're not going to be able to have like a smart contract on like an EVM chain or something like that. If we
well,
were
no,
talking,
but if you're on a DeFi platform and the platform lends it out to somebody, there is a smart contract in place.
right, but not for spot Bitcoin, there isn't. Not for
Well, no, but
spot.
I'm just saying, if they take out a dollar figure loan on on a Bitcoin, like if Bitcoin's at 70,000, and they borrow 1 Bitcoin, and they then the threshold for liquidation, I'll just say 60,000 for good round numbers, and it doesn't drop below that amount, then that second platform can't basically liquidate them, and because of the agreement that they have in place, correct?
Well, if we're talking about something like, let's say WBTC,
Yeah,
on an Ethereum virtual machine chain like,
absolutely, absolutely.
Arbitrum or Base,
Okay.
if we're talking about something like that, and I'm in that example, I would be, the user, and I would be depositing my WBTC, which is
Hmm.
a derivative,
Yeah,
again, like a derivative of the real thing, the spot
absolutely,
Bitcoin. So if I'm
absolutely.
depositing that derivative on Aave, let's say. Okay,
Hmm.
so I deposited that collateral on Aave. I'm
Hmm.
earning some yield on it. Well, then Aave is, now going to use that in their vaults, and someone else can borrow that WBTC. But
Absolutely.
that process on an Ethereum chain does not result in rehypothecation. So that would not actually create paper Bitcoin because of the smart contracts. But
Well,
in
I
this
think these are
example,
two separate conversations then, because
yeah, yeah, they are. Yeah.
the route I'm trying to get to is, because if what you were saying initially was true about the process that we're talking about, somebody lending out their wrapped Bitcoin or whatever to a platform who then lends it out, then DeFi falls apart. I mean, there's
So
if
I think I understand now, Mike. Okay,
okay,
so this process, this chain reaction, this image that I'm sharing here, this is not DeFi. This is not DeFi at all. This
gotcha.
is TradFi.
Oh
So
no,
this
absolutely,
is
absolutely. But
yeah.
you brought up the example of lending it out to a third party, and them using it for whatever. So in that example, it sounded like you were talking about DeFi.
Yeah, so in this example that I'm sharing right now on the screen, this image,
What in
this
the hell
is
is going? Something's going on with my internet, man.
I don't know. It seems okay to me.
Oh, it
Um,
cut out.
Oh, yeah, well, it's Starlink, man. It does that
Oh,
sometimes.
well,
But yeah,
let's move on. I was able to find that one headline. So the headline that I found was altcoins eyeing new all-time highs in March. So these coins is one called Stable. Have never heard of it. It's up 21% from all-time highs. Kenton CC is up 22% from all-time highs, and Pippin up 66% from all-time highs. Show breakout potential via inflows, resistance breaks, and decoupling from BTC despite broader uncertainty.
dude, what the hell is Pippin? Don't tell
I've,
me that's a meme coin, bro,
I've
please.
probably, but if it is, let's ignore it. Stable, if it's a meme coin, ignore it. But I just, like I said, I found a headline where it was talking about basically projects that weren't moving, that weren't correlated to Bitcoin and the broader market.
You want to see if we can find the charts of
Yes, yes, please.
yeah, I kind of do. Okay, let me see here. I want to go ahead and share this screen. Here we
Because,
go.
and
And
the reason that I'm bringing this up is I want to start looking at these markets because I personally believe, and I could totally be wrong, I personally believe at some point, once we fully realize this transition from a speculative market to a utility market, these projects eventually, the ones that survive the culling that's coming, of these millions
yeah,
millions of fucking tokens out there, they're
yeah.
going to have to move separately from Bitcoin because these projects and the pain points they're addressing and the utility that they're bringing to these to the markets is going to drive their price, not the way that Bitcoin moves. So retail and emotion and speculation historically is what has moved these markets. And that is everyone has correlated that to the price of Bitcoin. That's why the rest of the market moves with Bitcoin. As these institutions get involved, and you see projects, strong projects like Canton, and I'm not saying run out and buy Canton. I'm invested in it. I see it great potential. I do your own research. I'm not saying go buy it, but the data shows it is not moving with the rest of the market, and it is doing massive business with TradFi. With major institutions, banks, the New York Stock Exchange. A lot of different, not rumors of, or they might be talking to. They're actually doing business with them. I think personally, in my opinion, the reason that the price is moving in an uncorrelated fashion is because of that actual utility and adoption. And I think that other projects are going to do the same. So, David, go ahead.
Well, I mean, Mike, how much revenue is the Canton network generating each day? Like
It's
some,
I can look it up, but last time I looked a couple of days ago, it was over $3 million in fees that are being 100% of which are being burned per day.
you see, that is the thing that most of these protocols just don't do. They don't do this thing called making money.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
like that little thing,
that pesky data point.
I know, right? It's like most of DeFi and crypto is just vapor. It's talking about some really cool technology that no one cares about, that doesn't
Yeah,
make any money. And, something like Canton, it's just a walled garden chain, right? But the chart that I've got up on the screen here,
two
this,
2.45 million in the past 24 hours. So it's down about a half a million a day.
I mean, that is just a phenomenal amount of money. And
Yeah,
the thing that I'm always thinking about here, though, Mike, is my altcoin, whatever that altcoin is, if I'm invested in, it doesn't matter what the altcoin is, you got to price it in Bitcoin terms. So all you got to do, if we're taking a look at Canton in US dollar terms, this is what the chart looks like. Okay, we see a little bit of a breakdown here, a retest, rejected, moving a little bit lower, but definitely, almost in its own zone, its own realm, not quite correlated with other digital assets. But what
yeah.
we need to find out is Canton outperforming Bitcoin? And to do that, we just go ahead and price Canton in
Again,
Bitcoin
Bitcoin.
terms.
Yeah, yeah.
exactly, just like that. So this is what what the symbol would look like. So Canton in Bitcoin terms, and when you see the chart going up and to the right, that means outperformance. Canton outperforming Bitcoin. Now, look, not much data here because this is a relatively new token. So
Yes.
we've only got data going back to basically like the middle of November.
Yeah,
So not a
basically,
whole lot.
basically when the token launched.
But this is still clear outperformance. And there are very few altcoins that have actually outperformed Bitcoin this year. So,
Oh,
it's March 5th. Yeah. And very, very few, very, very few. So Canton is one of them. But Canton is unique because it actually makes money. And there are, you know, there are
that,
plans.
that pesky little thing.
I know, right? Well, there are big plans though for this network because my
Yeah.
understanding is that JP Morgan is going to start moving their repo book onto digital rails, and
Yeah.
Canton seems to be one of the beneficiaries of that. So that's a pretty big deal, I would say, and maybe that helps to explain some of this outperformance. But this is what you're looking for. If you're going to hold an altcoin, and if it is more volatile than Bitcoin, well, then you've got to be outperforming Bitcoin. Otherwise, why in the hell are you holding it? If you're
Yeah, you
holding
might as well
something
just
that
buy
is right, exactly. Like if you're holding something that's more volatile and you're not outperforming, I would really reconsider that.
absolutely. All
What were
right.
the other two, Mike? It was Canton and then
Oh, I knew
Pippin
you were going
and
to ask that. One was Pippin, but
yeah,
that's, I mean, look, we can look it up, but that sounds like a freaking meme coin.
yeah, it looks like one too. Pippin USDT. So this is kind of funny though, because I guess, whoever's the diamond-handed hodler with a big old bag of Pippin has just not been dumping it because man, like this is actually really, really good looking for a meme coin. This chart here. Is this a Solana meme coin?
Let
Because
me
if it is,
look it up. It's Pippin.
yeah, Pippin. So if this is a Solana meme coin, this is probably like the last survivor, like
Right?
from the meme coin casino of Solana over the last 2 years.
So Pippin is an SVG unicorn drawn using the latest LLM benchmarks, so language learning model, on Chat GPT. It is an autonomous AI agent on X. Pippin was created a recognized innovator and thought leader in the AI VC space, followed by Jeff Bezos and Mark Andreessen. He is also known for his build in public approach and has been at the forefront of AI and VC movement, launching over 100 plus AI driven prototypes, automation agents, and open source projects. His most notable
Wow.
build, Baby AGI, the first popular open source autonomous agent with task planning capability. The project went viral on Twitter, amassing millions of impressions and resulting in tens of thousands of GitHub stars, dozens of ARCs IV citations, I don't know what that is, coverage across major online media publications globally, and many speaker engagements, including the inaugural TED AI in San Francisco. So it's not a meme coin.
Yeah, I mean, so the creator Yohei Nakajima.
Yes.
So it looks like it's an AI agent,
Hmm.
but it's also definitely a meme coin, but it's got some utility. So that makes it, a
Okay.
little bit of a better uh
It's
better
a meme coin with utility.
I mean, so exactly how much utility are we talking here? So it's the AI unicorn origin. Uh
Yeah.
so so it looks like okay, unicorn illustrations. So that is like okay, all right, great. You made some unicorns. Awesome.
Yeah.
Uh okay, and then it's an autonomous agent that like posts on X. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then but there are a lot of those. And
Yeah.
then the code is open sourced and the art and lore okay, dude, I would sell this, sell
Yeah,
this thing. Like,
it's definitely not something I would be buying. And then
I know.
the last one is called Stable, Stable.
Well, but Mike, just the fact that this thing hasn't already collapsed means
Is
that
impressive.
that is really impressive, and
Well,
it
and I was
basically,
looking, and the amount of wallet holders are holding steady. The amount of wallets, the amount of holders is actually holding steady.
yeah, well, I mean, this looks like a great short down to 16 cents. That's like, cut the thing in half, man. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
something like this. If I throw down a horizontal, right there,
yeah. I mean
so
that's a proven line of support. You can see where it's been tested multiple times.
yeah, and this is just a straight up Solana meme coin that gained traction when everything else was
AI narrative.
crashing.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, but look at that. That was November of last year. That was when, Bitcoin really started to dump, man. But take a look at that outperformance. So that was
yeah.
when Bitcoin was really dumping. If we take a look at BTC from that same period of time, so November, this is Bitcoin in November, straight down.
Yeah.
And yet that meme coin, somebody was pumping that thing. Somebody was buying. And what's the market cap on this one? I wonder.
The market cap on Pippin is, let's see, the market cap is $347 million, or 300.
Amazing.
Yeah,
That's absolutely amazing to me. This is like one of the last survivors of the, that
a,
hasn't really collapsed yet.
the AI narrative memes. The AI agent.
Yeah, this is probably like one of the last ones, one of the newest ones, because most of those AI agent meme coins, they were launched like, in late 2024 or
Yeah,
like early or mid 2025. So yeah, man. Kind of interesting to see that. What was the last one though, Mike? You said it was stable?
yeah. Just
Stable.
STABLE.
Okay, so stable. I'm just going to assume it's this contract on Binance. So what is stable? Because it doesn't look too stable. It's
No, no.
I don't know. Okay,
Let's
I'm gonna ask Gemini.
let's take a look on Coin Market Cap.
Let's see here. So I'm just looking it up over here on Gemini.
Just shy
Um,
of 3 cents a token. The amount of holders is steadily increasing. Stable is a high throughput USDT gas layer 1 blockchain designed for real world financial applications, institutional settlement. This sounds like all the buzzwords, and consumer scale transactions. The network combines a simple fee model, gas paid in USDT, deterministic block space guarantees, and a validator architecture focused on reliability, transparency, and sustainable rewards. Stable is the native token used for network security, validator staking, governance, and ecosystem alignment. It is not used for gas. Instead, users pay transaction fees in USDT, while Stable captures value through validator economics, staking
oh, I
incentives.
get it. Yeah.
Okay, so what's
Okay.
up? What's up with it?
Well, so it looks like this guy Yohei is brilliant, man. He launched a very successful AI agent meme coin on Solana, and
Mhm.
then used that to launch like a layer one. That
Okay,
he's saying here that this stable works within this Pippin framework to show how an autonomous agent can manage a treasury
so
or
is it?
interact with DeFi.
So is this Stable or is this Pippin?
So I think that they're like part of the same ecosystem.
Oh,
That's
okay.
kind of what it looks like.
So he used like
So
proceeds from Pippin to fund Stable.
yeah, so it kind of looks like just according to what I'm reading here on Gemini, that the existence of stable highlights the creator Yohei's vision of agentic finance, a world where AI agents don't just chat but also hold balances, pay for their own API costs, and trade assets autonomously. So, I mean, look, unless his AI agents are actually generating revenue, this would be a strong sell along with
Okay.
Pippin,
All right.
because it's just, we've seen this type of narrative nonsense before where, people launch coins, they launch ecosystems, they say all sorts of buzzwords, they get people excited about it, but there's no there, like there's no actual, like, do you make money? Like, do you actually, like, what type of value are you providing? And are
Mhm.
you getting paid for providing that value? Remember, value for value with this stuff. So if there's no value being created and it's just a really cool idea, okay, well, that's awesome. But the token shouldn't have a $300 million market cap then, So when I take a look at stuff like this, I
Well,
always view it
well,
through
the
the
market
lens of,
cap
yeah,
of Stable is 561 million.
that's insane.
Yeah,
Like, dude,
yeah.
strong sell.
It's,
Yeah.
it's over $500 million.
Yeah, for what? Like, what exactly what does it do again? Is this like the best trading bot out there? Like, I don't think so.
Well,
I don't think so.
stable isn't an AI or a trading bot. It's a high throughput layer one that is designed for real world financial applications, institutional settlement, and consumer scale transactions. So basically, what it sounds like to me is another. We built a chain to for traditional finance and institutions to move value. I mean, that's really what it boils down to.
I mean, yeah, we've heard these
Yeah.
narratives over and over and over again, and dude, I just can't get excited about this stuff when I go to the website and it looks like a 5-year-old made it in MS Paint. Like, I
Yeah.
just, I just can't, man. Like, I can't do it anymore.
This
No.
this market is way too flooded with people that are going to solve TradFi. Um, unless somebody comes with with some addressing some new pain point. Because I mean, you got Canton, you got Ripple that was trying to corner that market. You got XLM, you got a lot of big players out there that that are already already sitting at the table. So and
Exactly.
for a new guy to break into those meeting rooms, they're going to have to come with some. They're going to have to come strong with something. They're going to have to come with something that the others don't offer. They're going to have to address a pain point, something that is going to address an issue that is costing them a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources that would incentivize them to move away from these other ones towards a new project. Just coming along saying that, hey, we're a blockchain where you can move value is not going to do it. They've already invested too much time and money. These huge institutions are too slow moving to jump ship and just jump on another chain unless the bean counters say in the long run this is going to be basically for our advantageous for our bottom line. Yes, let's do this. That's the way that they think. They think in weeks, months, or not weeks. They think in months, years, decades. They don't think in days, weeks. They don't think short term like that. These massive organizations, it takes people. It takes their legal team to sign off on something. All the C-suite positions have to sign off on something. They might have to take a vote. The board might have to vote on it. They got to do a bunch of research and have a bunch of data. It's These things don't happen overnight with these large. I've worked in these rooms. These things move fucking molasses slow in the wintertime. It's worse than our government. So you are not going to be the new guy, and unless you're coming with some strong functionality, you're not going to get their attention. You're just not.
Yeah, man, you've really got to come with the fire, and
Yeah,
it's got to be something that look, when I read and all
you got to
those
come in with like
buzzwords,
shoot 60s in the air with flamethrowers, with like girls in bikinis, and it's like
yeah, and
uh,
and even with all that, you've got to actually deliver value in a way that it's not currently being delivered, and you've got to be getting paid for it.
Yeah,
And all of these
and have proof of
memes, yeah, there's got to be something there. Um, so I'm taking a look here at Morpho because I see in the chat Wispy's talking about Morpho. So, an interesting lend borrow protocol, an interesting money market. Um, and the token, wasn't there a piece of news the other day, Mike, about some
yes.
large bank investing in Morpho?
So let me look that up because I want to make sure I get it right. Um,
Because when I take a look at this token here, man, this one has really pushed sharply higher, just since February 6th,
so
up 107%.
So those that don't know, Morpho is a borrow lend platform that's natively on Base, similar to Aave, and it has been gobbling up a lot of the market share. They have vaults, so basically bundles of assets, and you can invest in those vaults for yield. And you can also obviously lend out your assets and borrow. They are natively they are what are facilitating Coinbase's borrowing and lending functionality that's native on Coinbase. So let's see.
So
Uh,
that's really interesting. I wonder, Mike, what that's going to do for the Morpho token over time, because that was basically the reason why Arrow pumped was a big partnership with and actual real investment from Coinbase.
so
So
So it was
yeah,
Coinbase Ventures that,
right,
which
right,
is somewhat separate, because I made that mistake as well, and they
yeah.
invested heavily into Aerodrome. Currently, there isn't a direct connection between Aerodrome and the Coinbase platform, but Coinbase Ventures, because
Mike, you with us? I think Mike froze. Mike froze for a second.
yeah, I'm gonna have to go and mess with my freaking dish after this. So the
Yeah,
news was OKX integrates on-chain earn on Morpho. It looks like, it was Apollo Global Management acquiring up to
got it.
90 million Morpho tokens over 4 years, which amounts to about 9% of the supply. Continues to support sentiment with price appreciation and governance implications. Recent integrations include Safe Wallet for EU RCV stablecoin yields, and institutional grade security via Stakehouse, and broader RWA flows via Pendle, deploying 56.5 million in RWA's collateral on Morpho. So looks like Pendle is getting on board.
Well, hey, if Pendle's getting on board, that's a good sign. I'm
Yeah.
curious now about how the Morpho protocol itself generates revenue and how those revenues flow back to token holders. Because if Apollo is buying, a significant stake in Morpho, that must mean that those tokens are going to return value to them in some way. Because those guys are smart, man. They're not just going to buy it because they think number go up. So that Morpho protocol, how does it generate revenue? Because it's got a bunch of competitors. The Morpho is competing with Euler and with Aave. So, that partnership with Coinbase to handle, I guess, their lend borrow protocol in some way. How are they really generating revenue here? I wonder. I'm reading about it right now, actually.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing because I want to make sure that nothing has changed since I looked at it last. I'm really big on making sure that any information we put out is up to date.
Yeah, seriously. And whenever we make a mistake, immediately correct it and just put it out there like, hey, you know what? All good, man. I read something. It was on
Oh,
the
dude,
internet.
yeah,
It
I'll be
must,
the first to admit if I'm wrong about
yeah.
something.
Yeah. Well, dude, I read it on the internet, so it must have been true. That's how
Yeah,
you
it's
know
got to
it's
be.
good.
It's got to be.
That's how you know. But I'm reading about it, Mike, and I'm just trying to find out, how does the protocol generate revenue?
So it generates revenue primarily through protocol level fee on borrower interest payments. This fee is optional and capped, typically up to 25% of interest paid by borrowers, but it is not currently active. So it looks like they're not doing that because, and it's not saying this. I'm just guessing. I won't guess. The fee switch remains off as of early 2026. When enabled via governance vote, the protocol would capture a portion of the interest paid in its markets, which can amount to significant daily fees of around 300,000 to 324,000 currently daily, or annualized figures exceeding 200 million. I want to see how how this translates to value to Morpho token holders. The Morpho token is primarily a governance token, 1 billion total supply with significant portions vested and locked until 2028 to 2029. It does not currently have strong direct value accrual mechanisms like automatic revenue sharing, buybacks, or fee distributions. Value for holders comes indirectly through governance control, indirect alignment via restructuring. In a major 2026 update announced earlier in the year, Morpho Labs became a wholly owned subsidiary of Morpho Association, ultimately controlled by Morpho token holders from the DAO. This aligns any future value accrual from Morpho Labs from partnerships, grants, or fee capture directly with the token via the DAO rather than separating equity from tokens. The protocol's focus is on reinvesting any future revenue into product growth. So really, there's no direct correlation, or the fees and the revenue generated do not translate to token holders for the most part.
Yeah, so they don't right now. It doesn't right now, but it sounds like if or when that fee switch
Mhm.
gets flicked on by a governance vote, that all of a sudden there could be a hell of a
Absolutely,
lot of revenue. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
So that sounds pretty interesting. I'm having Nano Banana generate another image here of that fee switch, and so I've got this. Let me go ahead and share this tab.
Well, real
Pretty
quick, Wispy, the reason that they're not making profits is that fee switch is off from the sounds of it. So that would be correct that they're not making they're not making profits. But go ahead,
well.
David. Sorry.
No, it's kind of interesting that he said that, because I think he's right. I'm looking at DeFi Llama also. So here's my DeFi Llama tab, and over here, this is the income statement for Morpho. And so, I don't know about you, Mike, but if I'm losing $3 or $4 million a quarter, that's not too good, you know. And
No,
yeah, that's what it says here on the income statement for Morpho. But it also says gross protocol revenue, has been steadily increasing. It looks like, and 60 million in revenue in Q4 of 2025. So I
but
mean, they definitely generate
how would
revenue.
those numbers look if they turned the fee switch on, though?
So it looks like the cost of revenue, they're paying a lot to generate that revenue.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
and then
well,
the
I think
incentives.
a lot of that cost, what I was reading, before. I mean, this is just from my ongoing research, is incentives. They are incentivizing a lot of the vaults and things like that to try to draw that liquidity away from Aave and other platforms because liquidity's skinny, and they need liquidity. So I think this is a strategic move to where they are again trying to attract revenue. So they're in the negative because they're using a lot of the revenue that they are generating to attract that.
Yeah, yeah, and I see what Wispy's saying in the chat about, wasn't it true? Wasn't that the same concept for Link? And so Wispy in the chat is saying, wasn't that the same concept for Link? And it did nothing after they turned it on. Well, I think that this is the same concept for most of these, pure governance tokens. where the protocol actually does make some money, that they have an idea for like a fee switch, and that fee switch gets flicked on, and then everyone is underwhelmed by the yield, and then everyone, dumps their tokens. So, I don't know, of course, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish that I did, but it looks as though um, this annualized revenue of $200 million maybe could end up generating
Oh my
token
fucking
holders,
internet.
you know, up to 20%. It looks like. It looks like that fee switch could actually generate a lot of yield for token holders. So that explains why Apollo is interested in buying a stake over time in Morpho. And what else could be happening here is there could just be some traders buying after the news of Apollo's investment. That could be all that's going on here, is speculation driving the price up. But I've got to think that those guys at Apollo, have some type of an edge. They have to, otherwise they wouldn't make a bet like this. So, hey, man, Morpho. All that matters at the end of the day is price, and I see Morpho outperforming BTC since the end of January. So
Yeah.
this chart going up and to the right means Morpho outperforming Bitcoin. So, not bad. Congratulations to any holders of Morpho. Looks
I gotta
looks
call
like it.
back.
You guys, hey, congratulations, Mike.
Yeah, no, just I've had I'm terrible. Once I get into a project again, unless something fundamentally changes about the project, I'll hold a bag, for like pretty much to zero. And it's
Well,
my whole thesis is I just need one or two of them to hit, and the rest won't matter. You know.
yeah, man. Well, I mean, you get a couple of these doubles over the course of a month or two. You stack those up, and it starts to add up, man. For sure. That's for sure. What
Hey,
else we
what up,
got in the
Susie?
news?
All
Oh,
right.
Snowsies. Yeah, Snowsies lava. Uh-huh.
All right. So let's see what we got here. Next headline. The New York Stock Exchange owner ICE forges strategic partnership with OKX for tokenized stocks and crypto futures. So, Intercontinental Exchange, ICE, owner of the New York Stock Exchange, announces a partnership with crypto exchange OKX, including a strategic investment valuing OKX at $25 billion. The deal plans to launch tokenized stocks and crypto futures products, bridging TradFi liquidity and crypto infrastructure, extending trading hours and programmable assets. So we've seen this start to happen on Coinbase with 24/5, not 24/7, but 24/5 tokenized stocks trading. Kraken, we saw that news the other day. I believe Robinhood has started allowing tokenized stocks trading. So this is just ramping up. I mean, this isn't dying. We're not seeing the ebb, the decline of tokenized stocks and RWAs and DeFi. We're seeing the continual ramp up in this bear market, in this downturn as far as price. So keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on the brass ring and make sure that you're investing in the products that these rails are being built on, that are utilizing these rails, because that's going to it's not going to guarantee, but it's going to increase the chance of getting that next Amazon, that next Microsoft, that next big hit. But what are your thoughts, David?
Yeah, so as far as centralized exchanges go, there are a handful that I really like. OKX is one of them. Coinbase is not bad. There's nothing wrong with Coinbase. Um, we could take a look maybe at MEXC. I kind of like MEXC. But OKX is basically like one of the top tier exchanges. And to be valued at 25, you said $25 billion?
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. So what's their token? Does OKX have a token? I've got to think that they do, or
I
maybe
think they
maybe
do.
not. Yeah, it looks like just a bunch of wrapped LRTs and LSTs, stuff like that. OKX coin, OKB, OKB. That must be it. So, um, looks like OKX coin is having one hell of a day today. Was that news just from today, Mike?
Yeah, yeah. It's like all the news that I pull is like the latest news.
Well, wow. Take a look at this chart, man.
Yeah.
OKX coin. You know, how much was this up at its peak earlier during the session today? 60%. That's a pretty big day, man.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, hey, great for anyone who's holding a bag of OKX coin. It looks as though that
Pull,
exchange
pull
has
up
a
the
bright
24
future.
hour. Pull up the 24 hour. It's kind of crazy looking.
Oh man, the hourly.
No,
Yeah,
the 24 hour. Yeah, look at that.
yeah. Look at that. Exactly.
So yeah, if you were able to
Dude.
front run this thing, holy shit.
Oh man. Yeah, that's you can do really, really well with information like that. But this looks
Yeah.
like a flag too. This pattern here where we've got the pole and
Yeah.
then the down sloping flag just like that. That's a pretty well defined bull flag. And a bull flag is a bullish pattern. So you might see this break out above $123 over the next couple of days. Probably if Bitcoin starts to rally again throughout the rest of the month of March, you might actually see OKX coin push back up towards those highs at 125. Not bad. Not
Yeah.
bad. Might buy this. Where can you trade this on a decentralized exchange? I
I
wonder.
was gonna say you'd probably get it on OKX.
Yeah. I don't know that I want to trade on a centralized exchange though. I might trade this on a decentralized exchange somewhere. I wonder. OKB. Hey, I can trade it over on GMX.
There you
Very,
go.
very small market, but I could trade it over there. That's pretty cool. Trade it on Arbitrum.
There you go.
So I like this one. OKB. OKB.
All
And
right.
OKX is one of my favorite centralized exchanges. They're like a top tier centralized exchange.
Okay. All right. Well, next headline: March token unlocks hit 5.8 billion. So never heard of it. Power Protocol, $23 million unlock today. It looks like yeah, Power Protocol potential supply. Something called Rain. Oh, and it looks like Aster. Aster has a $56 million unlock on March 17th. Layer Zero, 45 million on March 20th. So there's some unlocks coming on Aster, which I am not a fan of. We talked about the like 95% of the supply is held by like 5 or 6 wallets. Um, and to be honest, I'm not a fan of anything that Binance is a part of.
Agreed. Agreed 100%. I'm taking a look here at a chart of Aster. And yeah, man, this thing, with an unlock, I have a hard time seeing anyone who's holding these tokens not dumping them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would expect this to move sharply lower.
Might be a good short.
Potentially, but at the same time, it's a Binance coin. So that
Yeah,
means it's
they might
subject
prop
to
it up.
big manipulation by those guys.
Well, and
So
if they have like
yeah.
if them and their buddies have 95% of the supply,
Yeah, man, I would just maybe watch this one from the sidelines simply because even though I would want to get short this thing,
yeah.
you just never know. You just never know what they're going to do over at Binance. What was the other one, Mike? So it was Aster, and there was another one that you mentioned.
One that's called Rain.
So Rain is like, oh, it looks like it's a token too. I wonder if this is associated with the company. So there's a company, I think, called Rain, and they issue like, cards, like Visa, MasterCard products for like crypto businesses. But I don't know if that has anything to do with this or not. What did it say about Rain? I missed that part, Mike.
So it's just that there's an unlock. I'm looking to see what
Oh,
it's
gotcha,
about
gotcha.
the project. So it says it functions as the Uniswap of prediction markets, offering a permissionless framework for anyone to create and trade custom markets without restrictions. The protocol features private markets for exclusive invitation only forecasting among communities and public markets that can be resolved by an integrated AI oracle. You
Hmm.
lost me. You lost me.
I mean, that actually sounds kind of interesting. Being able to create prediction markets, that sounds kind of interesting. What do you think about this? So here's the website. So this is a red flag immediately. Like, seeing a little like AI agent guy,
Yeah.
that's kind of a red flag.
If I'm investing in stuff, I'm over the cartoon. It's one of my big issues with Plume, and I've screamed and yelled about it at him on social media. If you want to be taken seriously and TradFi, and if you're going to be like the RWA, Rails, having a cartoon bird, as your mascot and stuff like that, and playing these like silly gamification to try to attract liquidity, not a good look. Not a good look.
Yeah, hopefully they're able to gain some traction, but I'm not a fan of these little cartoon characters. And, I would prefer that, if a crypto or DeFi protocol is going to actually build something cool, that they steer clear of like, stuff like this. Um, so I hope that it works out for Rain, but I have no interest in this token. And now that there's an unlock, it looks as though this maybe has some support down here, and that would be in percentage terms a move to the downside of like an additional 10%. So kind of interesting the way that this trades, but yeah, I would pass. I would pass on Rain.
Absolutely. All right, let's hit a couple of more of these and then go over to our educational portion. Let me see if I can cherry pick some of these. DeFi Development Corp is hosting a live X space with APYX on dividend-backed stablecoins today. So it looks like 7 p.m. Eastern on X. That's going on if anyone's interested. Again, that's DeFi Development Corp. The SWI dollar. USD SWI launches on SWI mainnet for DeFi and payments. SWI Foundation and Bridge, that was acquired by Stripe, launched native stablecoin USD SWI, pegged 1-to-1 with USD, backed by treasuries on mainnet, designed for scalable DeFi, payments, cross-border use, and integration across SWI apps, boost liquidity and compliant adoption on chain. So that's bullish for SWI.
Yeah, I mean that sounds pretty good. Look, I've always liked Sui. I've always liked the Sui chain. It's very easy to use, very fast, very cheap. Uses a novel programming language with that Move programming language. Maybe there are some really interesting things you can do with Move. Um, the token itself looks like shit though. So,
Yeah.
like, just looking at the chart of SUI, I would be a buyer of SUI in this green region down here. So, all I see here is a altcoin that broke support. I'm highlighting support here.
Yeah.
And, that's at around $1.30. So that level of support, when it broke, that is now, big time resistance. And the fact that SUI, even as Bitcoin bounced over the last couple of days and other altcoins have bounced, SUI hasn't even been able to get up to, its level of horizontal resistance on the upside, unlike Ethereum. And even unlike Bitcoin, which made it up to its horizontal resistance at 74.5. So if we price SUI in Bitcoin terms, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. See, moving down and to the right. So that is SUI underperforming Bitcoin even when they both bounce.
Mm.
So, if you're going to hold an altcoin that is more volatile than Bitcoin, well, it had better be outperforming Bitcoin. Otherwise, what's the point of holding the thing? So I kind of like Sui though. And if it gets down to 35 cents, I would buy some Sui because that's basically going to be, near the all-time lows for Sui. Um, I hold a bunch of short positions right now. Sui is one of my shorts. So maybe I'm talking my book a little bit. I don't think so. I just see what I see and I am short because of it. And if Sui makes a move all the way down to like 35 or 45 cents, I'll close out those shorts and I would actually start to buy. I would start to buy some Sui. Depends on how long that takes. But, the Bitcoin cycle analysis tells us that we've still got until the fall of this year, that the Bitcoin bear market likely lasts until the fall.
Okay.
So to me, that makes me think, okay, well, Sui's got, a couple more months. Maybe we've got 6 more months and it carves out a base down here. And then we get the first green shoots, at the end of the fall into the start of next year. So that's what I'm thinking for SUI. Maybe pick up some SUI at 35 cents.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's last headline. Everstake, Midas, and Apollo. So again, Apollo was the one that the news that came out about Morpho. They launch M MEVUSD tokenized yield strategy. So Everstake, that's for staking and yield. Midas on-chain investments and Apollo Crypto launched that yield tokenized yield strategy, a regulatory compliant USDC denominated tokenized strategy for institutions in the EU and other clients, offering yield and compliance with local rules. So I'll bring up the news article. Let me bring that up. So it looks like Everstake, one of the largest global non custodial staking and yield infrastructure providers for institutional and retail clients, and Midas, a platform for on chain investment products, announced the official launch of that, developed in collaboration and managed by Apollo Crypto. It's a regulatory compliant USDC denominated for the European Union and other selected jurisdictions. The launch introduces a professionally curated, market neutral yield strategy that targets 7% to 12% annual returns on stable assets. Indicative, indicative depending on market conditions by generating yield primarily from financing and interest rate spreads rather than crypto price movements. It offers banks, asset managers, and corporate treasuries a way to capture on-chain rewards while aiming to reduce directional market exposure. So basically, like a somewhat like what a delta neutral position or
Sounds like they're running some type of interest rate arbitrage.
okay. So it says it directly addresses the growing yield gap in the digital asset market, where money markets and treasury bills no longer satisfy institutional demand for higher on-chain returns. Market data from EY from end of year highlights this shift, reporting that 84% of institutions are already utilizing or interested in stablecoins, while 76% of firms intend to invest in tokenized assets by 2026. I think a lot of this has to do with legislation. A lot of these institutions, because they have fiduciary responsibility to stockholders, they have to be very careful in what they invest in and ensuring that they don't overexpose themselves, by investing in assets that don't have clear guardrails. And that's why a lot of this legislation in the U.S. is so important. A lot of other countries just copy and paste what the U.S. do or make small tweaks. So that's why that this Clarity Act and the Stablecoin Act, the Genius Act, stuff like that is so important to this technology and institutional adoption. Is they have to have those guardrails to be able to enter these markets. So, what are your thoughts, David? Before we move
Oh
into
man, I like what Snozy said in the chat that the Europeans have been, some of the most stringent with their regulations, and sometimes I wonder to myself, like, are these people in power actually trying to spur innovation or kill it? Because it certainly looks as though they're actually trying to just kill innovation. Um, so, I mean, look, I would love for the United States to be the hub of crypto innovation. And in order for that to happen, I think what we need is clear guidelines. Like people who are building in this space need to know what is legal. And once you know what's legal, then you can build within that framework. And so the moment that we get like real market structure, that Clarity Act, and it's crypto positive, like it's friendly for DeFi, friendly for crypto, then I think we're going to see all of these big institutions just jump on board head first because they see an opportunity to make money. And when that happens, hopefully this year we'll start to see like real adoption, like another wave of adoption. That's my hope, because I can't quite tell why number go up for many of these coins and tokens, aside from more people buying them, more people using them, user growth. So we get some real user growth, man, and that could signal the start of the next bull run. So hopefully we get that regulatory clarity this year. That's what I would like to see. Value for value.
Perfect. Well, with that, let's transition over to our educational portion of the show.
Our regularly scheduled programming.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so let's see here. What do we want to go through today? Um, I think this is something that could be kind of interesting, Mike. So, I don't know if I got a chance to share this with you yet, but I've been putting together a lot of research with DeFi Don about how to launch a token on Lightning. How do you launch a token on the Lightning Network? So, is this something that you think you might be interested in, or maybe the viewers might be interested in, or do you want to maybe go through something more educational? What do you think?
Let's go through something more educational, just because I know that our show was DeFi high, and then we kind of decided to beef up the show and started the node. Um, but yeah, let's get back to maybe something that's has a little more meat on the bone, something a little more intermediate level.
Gotcha. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop on over here to the DeFi University Course Hub. And once this loads, we're going to take a look at some of the DeFi high school stuff. So maybe like an intro to DeFi piece of content, maybe something like that. We were talking about smart contracts earlier. This might be interesting. Let me see if this is going to actually play for us. The video content. Okay, so it looks like I got to fix that link. Maybe first crypto steps. We could take a look at some of this content. Anything that's jumping out to you. Maybe let's see here. Staying safe or crypto fundamentals. Let's take a look at crypto fundamentals. This is usually pretty good. And this could be good. Okay, blockchain basics. I think this could be pretty interesting here because most people, I don't think, really understand how blockchains actually work, how transactions get verified, and why it's difficult or impossible in some chains to cheat the system. And then, the differences between different types of chains. In fact,
I actually ran into this morning. What is his name? I think it's like Terrence or something like that. It's a black actor, really good actor, and a really smart dude. And I was watching him on. He's been on Joe Rogan and a bunch of other ones. But he was actually asked on a popular podcast this morning about Bitcoin, and I was surprised at how uneducated. I mean, he had all kinds of things to say about it, but I'm really surprised at how little even very intelligent people understand Bitcoin. Because basically the way the reason he said he wasn't invested in it is because it's basically pegged to the dollar, and I'm like, no, it's not.
Nope. Not even close, man.
Yeah. So I was like, and he went on for like 5 minutes about why he's not invested in Bitcoin because it's going to zero because it's pegged to the dollar, and yeah, it's. I was just like, okay,
Well, pretty clear that he doesn't understand it. So maybe what he could do is he could join DeFi University and then he could start to learn it, a little bit here. Let's take a look. How blockchains build trust. And Mike, let me know if you can
All
hear
right,
this,
let's
okay?
dive into something that's really at the heart of all
Yeah.
this blockchain tech
Can you,
trust.
yep,
We're going to
awesome.
break down how in the world it's possible to build a totally secure financial system when there's no one, and I mean no one, actually in charge. I mean, think about it. How can you be sure that when somebody sends you some crypto, it's actually real, that it was theirs to send in the first place? And crucially, how do you know they didn't just send that exact same coin to someone else a second ago? Without a bank in the middle to vouch for everything, how does any of this work? Well, that is the big puzzle we are going to solve right now. The solution, and it's a brilliant one, starts by completely flipping how we think about trust. See, instead of putting all our faith in one single central place, a blockchain asks us to trust the power of a huge spread out crowd. So on the left, you've got the system we all know, right? Like a bank. All our trust is piled into that one entity, but that creates what's called a single point of failure. If that bank gets hacked or makes a big mistake, everything is at risk. Now look at the right. That's the blockchain model. Trust isn't in one place, it's distributed across thousands of different people. There's no one central server to attack, which makes the whole network unbelievably resilient.
Okay, so this is the ideal model where you've got thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of nodes and validators out there. That's the ideal. But that's not always how this ends up working in practice. Sometimes, you can see power coalesce around specific validator sets or specific nodes. Um, and that's kind of what you want to avoid.
Here's a great way to think about it. Would you feel safer with just one security guard watching your most valuable stuff? I mean, they could be bribed or just fall asleep, right? Or would you feel safer with a crowd of 1,000 independent witnesses where any single one of them can sound the alarm if something looks fishy? Blockchain bets everything on the power of that crowd. So let's really run with that analogy, the 1,000 witnesses. It is genuinely the perfect way to understand how a blockchain actually confirms a transaction from start to finish. Okay, so just imagine you're signing a major contract, but you do it in front of 1,000 independent notaries. First, they all watch you sign it. Simple enough. Then each one of them, on their own, checks to make sure your signature is legit. After that, every single one of them records what just happened in their own personal ledger. But here's the real magic, the final step. They all compare their notes with each other. And that contract only becomes official, locked in, when the vast majority of them agree on every single little detail. This whole process, watching, checking, recording, and comparing, that is exactly what a blockchain does every single time a transaction happens. Okay, so we've got these witnesses, which, in the real world are actually computers we call validators or miners. And we know they're checking things. But what are they actually looking for? Well, for every single transaction that comes through, they run this really simple but incredibly powerful checklist. First up, do you actually have the funds? They scan the entire history of the blockchain to make sure, yep, the money is in your wallet. Second, is your authorization valid? They use some pretty cool cryptography to prove it's really you sending the money and not an imposter. Third, and this is the absolute key to making digital money work, they check for conflicts. They make sure you aren't trying to spend the exact same digital coin in two different places. This is what solves the famous double spend problem. And finally, they just do a quick check to make sure the transaction follows all the basic rules of the network. Only when all four of those boxes are checked does the transaction get the green light. Now, this brings up a really important question. In this big decentralized system with thousands of computers all checking things, who gets to be the official witness? Who actually gets to add the next batch of transactions to the permanent record? Well, there are two main ways this gets decided. First, you've got proof of work. This is the OG system, the one that powers Bitcoin. You have these miners with super powerful computers all competing in this massive global race to solve a ridiculously hard math puzzle. The first one to solve it gets to add the next block of transactions to the chain, and they get a reward for their effort. The security here comes from the fact that it is just insanely expensive to cheat. To attack the network, a bad guy would need a mind-boggling amount of computing power and electricity. We're talking more than all the honest miners combined. It's just not practical. Then there's the other method, proof of stake. This is what Ethereum and a lot of the newer blockchains use. Here, instead of solving puzzles, these validators lock up or stake their own cryptocurrency as collateral. It's like putting down a security deposit. The network then randomly picks one of these validators to create the next block. If they do their job honestly, they get a reward. But if they try to cheat the system, their staked collateral gets destroyed. Poof, it's gone. So the security here comes from having skin in the game. You're financially motivated to play by the rules because cheating means you lose your own money. And when you put them side by side like this, the trade-offs become really clear. Proof of work, like Bitcoin, is an absolute fortress in terms of security. But man, it's slow and it uses a ton of electricity. Proof of stake, on the other hand, which Ethereum uses, is way faster and much, much more energy efficient. Its security comes from that economic stake rather than raw computing power. So, your transaction is verified, it's added to a block. You might think we're all done, but we're not quite. There is one last, absolutely crucial piece to this trust puzzle, and that's time. See, when your transaction gets into a block on the chain, that's called one confirmation. Every new block that gets added on top of it is another confirmation. And each new block is like another layer of concrete being poured on top, burying your transaction deeper and deeper into the chain. Each layer makes it exponentially harder and more expensive for anyone to go back and try to change the past. So while one confirmation is probably fine for buying a coffee, a huge transaction might wait for 12 or more confirmations, making it pretty much irreversible. Time itself becomes a lock, cementing that transaction into history forever.
Hmm.
And that
Interesting.
waiting time, that block time, varies a whole lot between different blockchains. For Bitcoin, a new block gets added roughly every 10 minutes. For Ethereum, it's about every 12 seconds. And then you have some of these newer chains like Solana that are cranking out blocks in under a second. But this doesn't mean faster is always better. It's a really fundamental design trade-off that every blockchain has to make between speed, security, and decentralization. Okay, so let's just pull this all together. Blockchain builds trust not through some central bank, but through a massive crowd of witnesses. These witnesses verify every single transaction against a strict checklist. They're chosen to be the official record keeper based on either showing proof of computational work or by putting up an economic stake. And with every new block that gets added, that trust just gets stronger and stronger as time itself locks the history of the chain in place. So we've figured out how we can trust that a transaction happened exactly as it was supposed to, all without a middleman. But that opens up an even bigger, kind of more profound question. If you can prove a transaction is valid and irreversible, what does that say about what it means to truly own something in a world that's purely digital? And that's a thought to take with you. Thanks for
Hmm.
tuning in.
I think that it means that you're the bearer of that asset, or maybe it means something different. I'm not quite sure, but it's really great nonetheless to learn just a little bit about how these blockchains work, how transactions get verified, and why it's difficult to cheat. You know what? It might be interesting to take a look here at lesson 7. Why is it hard to cheat? I don't know, man. Let's see.
Hey, everyone. So you've probably heard the word immutable thrown around when people talk about blockchains, right? That once something is on the chain, it's there forever. But what does that actually mean? How is that even possible? Well, today we're going to break down exactly why changing the past on a major blockchain is so ridiculously hard. All right, so let's get right into it. The whole idea behind a blockchain, I mean the real genius of it, is that it solves this huge digital problem. Think about it. In a world where you can copy, paste, delete, and edit pretty much anything with a click, how do you create a digital record that no one can secretly mess with? How do you build trust right into the code itself? That's the core question. Okay, to really wrap our heads around this, let's use an analogy. Forget about code for a second. Just picture a massive 10,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. It's already been put together, and it's sitting right there in the middle of a busy public square. And here's the key part. Everyone, and I mean everyone, has a perfect photo of the finished puzzle on their phone. Okay, so with that picture in mind, what happens if you try to cheat? Let's say you sneak in and try to swap out just one single piece. Well, a few things would happen immediately, right? First, your new piece probably won't even fit. The little interlocking shapes won't line up. Second, even if you jammed it in there, the picture on it would look totally wrong against all the pieces around it.
Right.
But most importantly, it wouldn't match the thousands of photos that everyone is holding as proof. Somebody would notice instantly. The whole system polices itself because it's so public and so interconnected.
Right.
So, that's a cool analogy, but how do we actually do that in the digital world? You can't have physical puzzle pieces. The answer lies in something called a cryptographic hash. This is the real magic ingredient. It's what acts like those interlocking edges for our digital puzzle pieces. So, what on earth is a hash? You can just think of it like a unique digital fingerprint for any piece of data you can imagine. You take some data, say a list of transactions, you run it through this super complex math formula, and it spits out this long, unique string of letters and numbers. That string, that fingerprint, represents that exact data and nothing else. And here's what makes it so powerful. This process is really easy to do, but it's totally impossible to undo. You take your data, like Sun5 BTC from Alice to Bob, you run it through the function, and bam, out comes the hash. But, and this is absolutely crucial, you can't take that hash output and work backwards to figure out what the original data was. It's a complete one-way street. And this leads to this really amazing property called the avalanche effect. Check this out. If you change even the tiniest detail in the input, I mean, you change one letter, or you change the transaction from 5 BTC to 6 BTC, the output hash doesn't just change a little bit, it becomes completely,
Completely different.
wildly, unrecognizably
Right.
different. And that is what makes tampering so screamingly obvious. And this is how it all comes together to create that unbreakable chain. See, each new block of transactions doesn't just hold its own data, it also holds the hash, that unique fingerprint of the block that came right before it. So think about what happens if you try to go back and change something in an old block. Its data changes, right? Which means its hash changes. But that hash was recorded in the next block. So now that link is broken.
Right.
You'd have to change that next block, which would change its hash, breaking the link to the next one, and on and on and on, in this huge cascade all the way to the present. You didn't just swap one puzzle piece. You literally broke the entire puzzle from that point forward. Okay, so if the math is that airtight, is it just impossible to cheat? Well, not in theory. And this brings us to probably the most famous and honestly the most misunderstood way someone could try to attack a blockchain: the 51% attack. So, what is a 51% attack? Basically, it's when one single person or a coordinated group manages to get control of more than half of the entire network's computing power, what's called the hash rate. If you could do that, you could, in theory, create your own version of the transaction history that grows faster than the honest one. And with that power, you might be able to reverse your own recent payments or even block other people's transactions from going through. Which,
Wow.
leads to a pretty obvious question. If this is a
Real
known
quick,
theoretical possibility, why isn't a huge
What's that, Mike?
something just popped into my head. So you
Huh.
know how you have a lot of these major institutions that have these massive server complexes, warehouses full of miners that pretty much push much of the compute. I know that a lot of people have wondered, kind of as the different halvings happen, and it potentially becomes less and less profitable, because the price would have to keep going up to maintain the profitability for people to invest the money
Sure.
into doing the compute and things like that. Potentially, if the price didn't continue to go up and it became less profitable, and like I saw on the news when I was compiling the news this morning, one group actually is shifting over to being a data center for AI and away from Bitcoin mining.
I saw that.
Would that then allow the opportunity for smaller, individuals or smaller groups to move in and actually do the compute at a cheaper cost to then again make it profitable again? And I don't know. I'm asking you.
I think that it's some function of hash rate. So as hash rate goes up, it takes more compute to be able to mine BTC. But as hash rate falls, you need less compute to mine the same BTC. So that means that if miners were to turn off their machines,
Yeah,
the remaining miners would earn more. So
exactly.
yeah, I'm thinking that and I see Snowsy's Lava says, yeah, I have a model here I can share with you guys. Maybe for something to do with Bitcoin mining, I guess. But yeah, I mean, the Bitcoin miner business model, as long as number go up for BTC, and as long as they've got either very, very cheap or free electricity, then maybe it can continue to work. But what happens after the next couple of halvings if price doesn't continue on this logarithmic curve to the upside?
Exactly.
That's the thing to think about. So basically, a bet on Bitcoin miners is a bet on the price of Bitcoin going up, which I guess is as much a bet on the value of the dollar going down as it is anything else. So maybe not a bad bet, but you've really got to be able to model the next like couple of halving cycles,
Yeah.
and you've also got to be able to figure out like of the miners that are out there that are investable, like what do their business models look like? How much debt are they holding, if any? How are they going to be able to refresh their machines to keep pace
Yeah.
and stay energy efficient? Uh, there's a lot that goes into analyzing that. But I saw that there's some guy from, one of the AI researchers over at OpenAI who I guess got fired or left or something like that. Started a really successful company. One of the most recent investments, I guess, is in Bitcoin miners. So hey, I mean, look, if you want to buy up a bunch of hash power now, during the bear market, I think that makes sense, right? You
Yeah.
start building a position now.
Mhm.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Network like Bitcoin or Ethereum constantly under threat. Why do we still consider them to be so secure? Well, the answer isn't just about some clever piece of code. It comes down to something much more simple and brutal, really. It's about cold, hard economics. For a massive global network, the cost of actually pulling off an attack like this is so mind bogglingly high that it just becomes completely and totally irrational to even try.
Mm.
And really, you can boil it all down to this simple imbalance. The potential gain you could get from, say, reversing a few of your own transactions. It's absolutely dwarfed by the guaranteed astronomical cost of buying and running all the computer hardware you need to control the network in the first place. You would have to spend billions of dollars for the chance to maybe steal back millions. The math just doesn't add up, not even
Real
close.
quick though,
And I'm not talking about small amounts.
Yeah.
what if groups got together? So what if there was like three, four, five, six or more groups that collectively controlled, over half of the hash rate and decided to do a coordinated effort? Or they, basically decided, what they wanted to do, with the Bitcoin mainnet.
So I'm pretty sure, didn't Monero XMR experience a 51% attack orchestrated by Cubic?
I
I'm
think so.
reading. Yeah, I'm reading about it right now.
Well, that was
So
that was the big crash in Monero, because Monero was looking to be a really strong project. I mean, price was pumping; it was doing.
yeah, so Mike, what I see here about that attack was, I'm just reading about it right now, but I'm not quite sure that it was a true 51% attack. It looks like from what I'm reading that it was what they call a benevolent attack. So a
Benevolent attack.
so it's like a civil war, a
Yes.
benevolent attack. Um, I guess the point of it was to show Monero's ASIC resistant algorithm could still be centralized by economic means. And so, yeah, like what was the point? Like why perform the 51% attack? Was it just to make money? Was that the whole point? Um, not quite sure, but you know, could Bitcoin come under a 51% attack? Do you think that that's a possibility? I don't know. Could Bitcoin come under a 51% attack? I don't know. Let's see what
Well,
Gemini has to say.
and I know you were saying that that the Lightning Network was becoming more and more centralized. So, I mean, could something like that happen on the Lightning Network?
Mike, the Starlink broke up there for a second.
Man, my internet's sucking today. I apologize, but I was saying, in our past episodes, we've been talking about the Lightning Network and how it's becoming more and more centralized. Is that something that could happen on the Lightning Network and indirectly, be somewhat of an attack on Bitcoin, depending on the reliance of people on the Lightning Network?
It sounds like that's theoretically possible. Yeah, it really does. And just reading here about how Bitcoin could undergo a 51% attack. Um, so even though it says it's theoretically possible, it's possible but not practical. So that's what I'm seeing here. So it would be a big financial barrier. So it looks like the cost of a 1 week attack on Bitcoin would be $6 billion. So you would need to acquire millions of these ASICs. And then those ASICs, that would be your infrastructure. You would also need to seize data centers to house those ASICs. And then you would need to power them, your electricity. And let's see here. What could the attack do? Well, I guess you could start to double spend Bitcoin. And you could mine empty blocks in order to freeze the network. But it looks like you couldn't steal BTC, you couldn't change the rules, and you couldn't rewrite history. So, and this is based on, I was just reading about that Monero 51% attack at first. But why don't we say, how could Lightning get attacked in a similar way? I'm just kind of curious about that. How could the Lightning Network get attacked in a way, maybe it wouldn't be a 51% attack because there's no mining, but you could attack it through liquidity dominance, it says. So for Lightning, instead of controlling hash rate, an attacker controls a majority of the network's pipes or channels, or its ability to talk to the main Bitcoin blockchain. So let's see, in a way that mimics a 51% takeover, it's called flood and loot. Wow. So it says this is the closest equivalent to a 51% attack because it targets the network's consensus security. Okay, so the goal here would be to steal funds by preventing honest nodes from complaining to the Bitcoin blockchain. So an attacker opens hundreds of channels and initiates a massive wave of payments. They then refuse to finalize them. This forces victim nodes to close their channels on chain to recover their money. Got it. Okay. So the attacker purposely floods the layer 1 mempool with high fee transactions. If the attacker can crowd out the layer 1 for long enough, the victim's justice transactions, which are supposed to prevent theft, will not get confirmed. The time lock expires and the attacker loots the funds. Oh, wow, that's brilliant. But you would need a lot of money to be able to make that work. But I guess you could essentially do that. You're basically just, using the network, the way that the network works against itself for malicious purpose. Here's another way that you could, attack Lightning. It's called channel jamming. So network denial of service. So if an attacker controls enough liquidity on a large number of strategic hub nodes, they could paralyze the network. Number of slots. They have specifically 483 slots in progress. Hash time contracts, HTLCs. So the attacker would send thousands of tiny looping payments to themselves through other people's nodes, but never complete them. These payments would sit in flight, hanging there and using up all the available slots. So even if the channels have plenty of Bitcoin, they become jammed and cannot process legitimate payments. And so by controlling just a few key hubs, an attacker can effectively censor the routing of the entire network. Wow, that's not good. Okay, so here's another way that you could attack Lightning, I guess. They call this time dilation. Oh my goodness, or the eclipse attack. So it says here, this attack targets a node's perception of time, similar to how a 51% attack on Monero might involve a secret chain. Huh. So an attacker eclipses a Lightning node by making sure it only connects to peer nodes controlled by the attacker. Okay, got it. The attacker slowly feeds the victim delayed blocks from the Bitcoin network. The victim thinks it's at block 100, but the real block is block 110. So the result is that the attacker closes a channel with an old fraudulent state. Oh, that's not good. Because the victim's clock is lagging behind, their software doesn't realize the deadline to broadcast a justice transaction has already passed in the real world. By the time the victim sees the truth, the money's gone. Oh man. Okay, so these are 3 attack vectors that we need to be aware of. So for Monero, it's basically just compute power, and you would be able to double spend or reorder blocks. For Lightning, you've got flood and loot, jamming, and eclipse. And so the flood and loot is just like mempool flooding.
Okay.
The result would be like you steal funds from the channels. For the jamming attack, it looks like you flood the routing slots. And so that freezes the ability for the nodes to be able to transact. And then for the eclipse, it looks like you mess with the connections. And so you are able to steal funds because they can't get those justice transactions, like through on the main Bitcoin layer 1 in time because their clock is all messed up. So they're looking at like old blocks, thinking that they have time to submit justice transactions, and they don't. So wow, this is really interesting, especially for me, like building on Lightning. Really interesting to learn about this. You know what I can do with this? I can turn this into educational material. So I would just tell Gemini, turn that content about the different ways to attack Lightning, about the different ways to attack the Lightning network.
And just so everybody knows that, like what David's doing right now, you can all do. This is part of your due diligence when it comes to investing. Utilize these tools. Trust but verify. AI, because it's not always right, but it's very easy to leverage AI to generate and help you to understand these complex topics. Again, I'm a retired vet, got hit in the head a bunch, and I'm a lot of times I'm trying to understand what David's talking about. That's why I slow him down and have him explain some things, because there's sometimes that I don't understand this stuff. So AI is a great tool. I use one that I can speak to. It's Miles, and I just ask it, hey, can you break down very simply for me, what this is? And it will explain it to me in a very, very simple way. These are the tools. I mean, you have these tools at your disposal, and I highly encourage you to learn how to use them to, to maximize your success, in your investments and the things that you're doing. Or if you want to build something, if you're looking to build a website, you're looking to build a DApp or an app or whatever. So anyway, go ahead, David.
Yeah. So I'm looking at what it looks like. Snowzies is posting in the chat about Barachain. So what exactly? Because Barachain, I know that TVL dumped in a big way on Bara. But I don't know.
It had some major exploits.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like, after it launched, it was, just really big players like farming incentives or something. And
Mhm.
then, the TVL just fell right off a cliff, you
Yeah.
know, uh, down from at its peak 3.3 billion. I mean, this is basically dead now. So
Yeah.
what happened? What happened to Barachain?
It has some
And
mixed signals.
yeah, so and horrible name, really, really horrible name there too. Like
It
who wants
should
to go
it
on the
should be
bear
it should be
chain?
bullish chain.
Yeah, it should have been the bullet chain, but instead they made it the bear chain, and I just, no one wants to operate on the bear chain. People want to be on the bull chain.
Right?
So let's see here. I want to go ahead and bring it back to the education, and
He said the farmers left after testnet. So, a lot of the people that were, because I know that Jeff, my co-host for Crypto and Chill, he's big on airdrops, and I know that he got the Barachain airdrop, and he regrets. I believe that it's one of the ones that he regrets not selling. He
yeah,
held on to it a little too long.
yeah, man, that's it's not easy when you get an airdrop like that. For me, anyway, unless I really, really have a deep understanding of how the protocol is generating revenue, then I'll probably just dump it immediately. Um, but there are some interesting pieces of content here in Module 3 in the DeFi University, in beginner DeFi concepts. Some really interesting stuff here. And we've also got some really interesting stuff just talking about, decentralized exchanges and money markets. So, we were talking about Morpho earlier today. And what we could actually do here, Mike, is didn't we end up talking about Morpho a couple of like earlier? I think it was last week. So
Oh yeah,
maybe we don't want to repeat that, but let's see here. I'm just trying to find like a piece of content in the last couple of minutes that we could go through that would be interesting for everyone. Um, I've got a lot of stuff over here just in the school community, and I would like it to be something that we haven't gone through at all yet, something completely brand new.
well,
Um,
really quick, I do want to do this because I want to make it a habit to do this at the end of every show. I want to shill our freaking X account since we don't have a
awesome.
YouTube yet. So if you could, I mean, we're already up to just in the past couple of days, we're up to 77 people following us. If you could, and you haven't already, just find us on at the Node channel on X and just give us a follow. It's a great way for if you like our content, that where you can get alerts and see that we're live and watch us. Of course, you can find us on DeFi Crypto and Airdrops. You can find us on DeFi University and our personal X accounts. But specifically for the Node, until we get our YouTube channel up, Google if you're listening, or the AI over at YouTube if you're listening. We'd really like to start our channel. If you could, approve us, we'd appreciate it.
It's
Anyway,
just a matter of time, I think,
yeah, yeah.
And Mike, take a look at that the website too for the
Oh,
node.pro.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to continue working on that today. And my goal is to be able to get that all set up and, just make sure that here, if we're taking a look at this, so on the left-hand panel right there on
Yeah.
the new website, that's where all of the research is going to be. So all of the news, all of the research that Mike puts together every morning, we're going to be able to talk through it. And all of you guys will be able to click through to all the links for
Yeah.
every single piece of research and news. So that's where all the research links are going to go on that left-hand panel. In the center panel, that's where the live stream that's going to be. So we're going to start off with X since we don't have a YouTube account yet. And then it's going to be, so not just X, but also Twitch, Kick, and arena.social, in addition to YouTube. But we're going to start off with X. And then the right-hand panel there, that's the live terminal. So that's the unified chat. So everyone on all of the different platforms, I'm just wiring up the chat into that live terminal right there. And then, Mike, if you click on where it says Learn, that Learn tab up in the top, you got to leer. You got to leer more.
It's
So
all about
it's all about the leering, man. And so this is where all the layering is. Um, so this is right now just in the beta version. I just wanted to get everything thrown up there. I've got some things locked in there that probably will not end up being locked, by the end of the day today. Haven't quite figured out exactly what to do with that yet, but just building it into, what's going to be a really, really cool site. And then we're going to have all of the replays for all of the recordings here. I'm
Mhm.
thinking, somewhere up on the site so that people can go back through them if they'd like to. All of the educational material we can start to go through from the node.pro rather than going to DeFi University, because
Oh, and
it'll be
also
all.
the research tools. We're going to have research tools that myself and David use to do all of our research.
Yeah, not just the research tools, but also maybe a newsletter. We'll see.
Yep.
So there's a lot of opportunity here, and building during the bear market and just putting out content every single day like this, it's going to pay massive dividends once we start to get some traction in the next bull market. So yeah, and Snowzies is talking about a crypto banter. Um, Yeah. So, look,
They're
there,
entertaining.
yeah, there are a lot of these crypto and DeFi channels out there, but I think ours is unique in that we've got like really, really, beginner focused and high level educational content on Bitcoin and Lightning and Nostr and Ethereum and perps dexes and money markets and
Well,
you
and
know
all this that we're offering is free. I can't
yeah.
emphasize that enough. Is a lot. Snowzy's talking about I guess some guy named Steven charges like $200 a month and stuff like that. We offer everything for free. DeFi University is free. This website that David's building is free. All of our content is free. You don't need to subscribe. There's no paywalls, anything like that. Everything we do here is free. We don't get paid if we talk about a project. I'm very bullish on it. We have never received a single token or a single dollar from the Canton team for the interview that we did with Shaw. We're going to have him on again. Our prayers are with him and his family and friends. I guess he's over in Israel. We're trying to get him back on the show, but they're under constant air raid sirens and stuff like that. So obviously that's their priority right now, not doing interviews. So yeah, I mean there's nothing to lose, and honestly, if we can get enough people and enough traffic going to the node.pro, we won't need YouTube. I mean, if everyone, well, because in YouTube, only people that are on that channel can chat with each other. If they're on X or Kick or whatever, they can. So having a unified chat would be awesome. So if you could, once this is up and going, if you want to start watching on the Node.pro, I mean, that might be a great way for you all to kind of help us build a strong community cross platform.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my goal by the end of the day today is to have the research panel, the center panel with the live feed, and that live chat terminal all wired up. That's my goal by the end of the day today. And then, I just want to make sure that all of that educational material that it displays properly, because right now it doesn't really display all that well. And then, I really believe in this concept of value for value. And so I built a little tool that allows me to integrate into any website, basically a payment button. So either a Zap button or ETH or Sol or Bitcoin mainnet payments. So I'm just thinking like, there is so much value in all that educational material that if you get something out of it and you want to express, your love for it or whatever, zap us some sats. We love
Yeah,
sats.
yeah,
Sats are
yeah.
great, you know.
I'm always getting David to send me sats.
I'm all about the sats.
Well, I'm up to
So
like 81 cents, man. By
yeah, man.
this rate, in another couple decades, I might have enough to do something meaningful.
Yeah, zap some sats. So that's basically the way that I'm thinking about this. Is, maybe there's a subscription product in there if you really want to just like dedicate some time to going through the educational content. Um, and maybe there's a subscription product for a newsletter. But for the vast majority of the stuff there, I think it's just value for value. It's free, it's up there. If you get some value from it, you can zap some value back. So,
Awesome.
but totally up to you.
Well, I guess that wraps it up. We've hit our 2 hours, and I guess make sure that you join us tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m.
Yes.
I'm sure David will be there. I know that you love being on. So me, David, Jeff, and I'll probably end up reaching out to a couple of other people. I'd like to have like 4 or 5 people on just to get some differing viewpoints. But yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about, what was it that I mentioned earlier?
Well, whatever it is, it's going to be muy picante. It's going to be very spicy.
No, it's definitely going to get spicy, but I usually have a topic to kick it all off. And it was about social media and just attention spans, and basically the conspiracy theory that the CIA basically started Facebook for that purpose, and short form social media to break attention spans. Because I mean, you see it all the time now. I mean, they came out and said, the government came out and said that the U.S. government had a role in the JFK assassination. They came out and said UFOs are real. They came out and with Jeffrey Epstein, and basically saying that massive amounts of people in positions of power in Hollywood and government and royalty around the world, the elites, are basically involved in pedophilia and all kinds of other stuff, and people just their attention is so easily shifted. Instead of being in the streets outraged about these things, they're just doom scrolling on social media, and just
man.
They have the attention span of a squirrel. So
Mike, basically, bro, like after COVID, like all of the things that were conspiracy theories all turned out to be true, man.
Yeah,
all turned out to be true.
No, like all the stuff that like back in the 1900s when I was growing up, all the stuff that people were laughed at, for having tinfoil hats, and about JFK and the moon landing, and all those aliens and all those different things. Everyone used to laugh at people. Now who's laughing? Because all of it ended up being true.
I know.
So no kidding. Where it's at. So I'll show you that real quick, and then we'll wrap this up. So if you want to find the red pill, it's just over here on DeFi Crypto and Airdrops. It will be up here where the node is now when we're live. But if you want to watch the old all the old episodes, we've been doing this for a little while now. But the red pill, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, and this is some of our past episodes. If you want to just fucking go through and just kind of binge those, there's some very comical content in there. So anyway,
it's going to be great. It's always fun.
It is. Well, until tonight, we'll see you then. Veteran Crypto out.
Peace.